Hey there teachers, welcome to Miss Estruch Teach Tell, the podcast where every week I dive into all the tips and tricks that make teaching life so much easier. Whether you're a veteran educator, an early career teacher learning the ropes, or balancing the classroom with being a busy parent, this will help you streamline your workload and bring a bit more balance to your life. You bring the coffee and I'll bring the teach and tell. Imagine having a tool that could write a quiz, suggest active recall activities, or adapt lesson content for students with ADHD, for example, all in a matter of seconds. That's what we're exploring today, and it's all with ChatGPT. Hello teachers, and welcome back to Miss Estruch Teach and Tell, where every week we dive into ways to streamline your workload, boost your productivity, and make teaching just that bit easier. If you're looking for ways to save time, cut back on the repetitive tasks, this episode is for you. And that is because today we're going to be talking about a game-changing strategy, which is ChatGPT. And yes, AI can be scary, but it can also be a teacher's best friend if you know how to use it. So if you find this useful in today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. Your feedback helps me to reach more teachers and more listeners to help them as well. Okay, so quick coffee catch up. This week, what have I been up to? Well, I still have a cold. If you listened to me last episode, you will know that I said I've had a cold for a couple of weeks. I still have it, which is making editing so interesting because I still have to record content, but it means I have to keep editing out all the coughs. But on top of that, I'm actually in the process of trying to get things sorted for my flat going on the market because I'm going to be selling and moving house, hopefully before my children start primary school. So that's a whole other level of jobs and stress to add on to an already busy life. But ChatGPT has been a game changer for me. Well, not game changer because I use it anyway, but it has helped me so much this week, being able to get all of my jobs done whilst also sorting out the flat. And actually, I did speak to one of you on Instagram this week, and you said you were also really struggling at the moment to balance your demands that you're getting from school, the increasing demands coming from SLT, with home life, having a young child. And it is difficult. And I was saying to you, we were talking about it, saying it does depend on what your SLT are like, how easy it is for you to balance it. But hopefully, things I go through today about using ChatGPT will enable lots of you to gain back some valuable time so you can get that balance that you absolutely deserve. You might also notice that my coffee mug I'm showing YouTube at the moment, my coffee mug this week is my Merry Christmas one. I mean, I do actually use it a lot anyway because I love the thickness of this mug, but I have been filming my Christmas content for YouTube as well. And I'm not actually sure when I'm posting this episode out, but for context, it is November at the moment and I'm filming my Christmas content, but that's just the way it works. Okay, let's jump into the main content then, using ChatGPT. And having ChatGPT there, which by the way is completely free if you're using the free version, which is sufficient, it is like having a 24/7 assistant for all of those tasks that usually eat up your time. Whether it's creating quizzes, like multiple choice quizzes or question sheets, coming up with new lesson ideas or lesson plans, or even suggesting different ways to support students with specific needs. ChatGPT can literally help with all of that and do it all. So today I'm going to walk you through my favourite uses of it, and I'll talk you through the prompts that I use, how to use it, basically covering everything from making multiple choice questions to lesson planning and everything in between. So let's begin then with using ChatGPT for creating quick multiple choice questions. This is such a useful way to assess learning. For example, as a quick starter activity, or in the middle of the lesson just to check, have they understood what you're doing so far? Keep students engaged, checking for any misconceptions, or doing it as a plenary as well. But they can actually take quite a while to write if you want to have really effective multiple choice questions, which are specific to your spec, they are the right level of challenge, and you've got really good questions. So I have tried to make these in the past, and the trap that I always fall into is I just tend to make them way too easy. And then if I think, well, how can I make it harder? Sometimes I just go to the other end of the scale. So it takes me a bit of time to get them bang on correct and come up with answers as options there that are not obviously wrong, and therefore make it harder and to really differentiate, have they understood the information, and differentiate between those top grades as well. And ChatGPT can do all of this for you in seconds. So let's imagine we're teaching photosynthesis. You could tell ChatGPT to write 5 multiple choice questions with answers on photosynthesis. And what you can do then as well, be even more specific and say to it, I am doing this for A-level biology. It is for the AQA specification. If you want, you can actually copy and paste that bit of the spec in. You don't have to though, because ChatGPT can actually access the spec online because it's a document readily available. I would then say, my students are target grades between a C and an A star. So I want the questions to be appropriate for that level of challenge and to have some which would be lower end, grade C, and the higher end, A star. So that means I want you to have some really difficult discriminator questions. So that would be my prompt. I'd probably also say I want to have multiple choice questions where there are 4 answers. I mean, you can choose how many answers you want for them to pick between, but I'm going to say 4 answers, one of them is correct. And not only that, I want you to tell me the correct answer, and I want you to give me an explanation as to why that one is correct and why the other 3 answers are incorrect. That bit of time to type it will take you maybe 1 minute to type it. ChatGPT will then pump all of that out in seconds. And you can then literally just copy and paste it, put it onto a worksheet if you want it as a worksheet, copy and paste it onto whatever you use for setting homework, whether that's Satchel 1, maybe use Google Classroom, and you've got your homework set. Or it could be you want to use it in your lesson, so copy and paste it onto a PowerPoint. And that then is an activity made in 2 minutes. And it's a really high quality one as well. And you can make as many of those as you want for as many different topics. Number 2 is one that I actually only discovered recently. And it is amazing for me as a science teacher because I am frequently creating resources where I might need a data table or a graph. And one thing that can be quite time consuming is coming up with your own data to use, which does actually make sense scientifically, and then creating that table on Excel, and then creating that graph on Excel, copying it over onto a worksheet or copying it over onto my PowerPoint, whatever it might be. All of that could easily take me 20 minutes. And if I'm researching the data to use, it could take longer. I actually discovered that you can use ChatGPT for all of those stages. However, I do want to just point out that ChatGPT does have a limit on how many times you can do this for free per day. So it's only a daily limit of what it calls the data analysis feature. I think it lets you do it maybe 3 or 4 times, and then it says you've reached your data analysis limit. You can't do it again until tomorrow. But that's probably enough if you're going to be creating 1 resource or 2 resources. So this is what you would need to do for creating a graph or a table. You could simply say, I want to have students calculate the mean. I want them to spot anomalies in data, and then I want them to describe and explain a pattern from a graph. And the data needs to be linked to, I don't know, let's say aerobic respiration in yeast when you are varying the concentration of glucose available for that yeast, or whatever experiment it is you want. You type that into ChatGPT and tell it, I want you to create this as a table of data. And then I want you to create it as a graph. I like to tell it what the axes label should be, what the title should be. And like I said, if you want them to deliberately spot an anomaly, then tell it to put an anomaly in. And it will create your table and your graph, again, in a matter of seconds. And you can then just screenshot or copy and paste that table, that graph, onto your Word document for your resource that you might be making, or onto your PowerPoint. And I've actually used this a lot in creating my GCSE skills lessons and A-level skills lessons, which are available on my website. In the GCSE skills lesson one, I have a whole lesson that I created on data analysis. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't copying any questions from AQA, because I'm not allowed to do that because it's copyrighted. But I knew it'd take me ages to do the research myself to find data that is actually scientifically correct, like it makes sense. So instead I got ChatGPT to make all of my examples. I then made sure it fit the skills I wanted, tweaked it slightly, and then I had a whole lesson created, and it was so quick and easy to do. So if you aren't already aware of using ChatGPT for creating graphs and tables, it is amazing for that. And like I said, you can even turn this into a whole range of different activities. So I've also said I want you to add an error into the graph, and then I'm going to get students to pick out what the error is. And I might say, I want to do this 3 times. So show me 3 different versions with 3 different errors. Make sure you point out what the error is as well and explain why it's an error. And then I can just paste that picture and the explanation. You obviously need to check all of this because you are the professional, you are qualified. So don't literally just copy and paste things without checking it, because sometimes you do need to tweak it, but it is an amazing start point, and most of the time it is near perfect. Right, number 3 is generating active recall activities. More and more I know teachers are trying to refresh lessons if they're veteran teachers, or if you're new to the profession, you're creating your lessons from scratch. And we are all very aware that active engagement is the key to, first of all, having a lesson that is engaging, but making sure that we can test the student's understanding and making sure that they are improving their long-term memory. And active recall resources are best for this. So once you've maybe explained some information, you might want to have some short exam style questions, or a fill in the gap, or spot the error, whatever it might be. And this is something else that I use ChatGPT for. So I might prompt it saying, suggest some active recall exercises that I could use in a lesson on, let's say, cell division for A-level biology AQA exam specification. And it will then give you a list of ideas. If you like the sound of any of those activities, what I then do is say, I like the sound of activity number 2 that you suggested. Please now create the instructions, the activity itself, the answers, and the explanation of the answer. And then you've got the whole thing created. And the instructions I might then just paste into my notes section of the PowerPoint so that I can just remind myself how this activity was meant to be run. I put the activity itself on the PowerPoint, and then the answers and explanation that have been provided can go on the next slide. So I've done this loads of times for fill in the gap activities. And quite often what I do for this is I copy and paste my A-level notes into ChatGPT and say, for this block of information, create a fill in the gaps activity. And you might not have my notes, so you might then instead think, well, I'll just copy and paste a spec and say, for this information from the spec, create a paragraph and do a fill in the gaps activity. And it will give you the version with the gaps, so you can just copy and paste it or screenshot it. And then it will give you the version either with the list of answers, or if you don't want it like that, you can say, actually, I don't want the list of answers. I want you to put the correct answer in the paragraph, but put the correct answer in bold for me so it stands out. And then you can copy and paste that. I've also done this for exam style questions. If I don't want to use past paper questions, using up that bank or knowing they might have seen them. So I asked ChatGPT to make me some questions. And again, I'll specify the topic, whether it's A-level or GCSE. I might specify the level of challenge, so whether I want it to be for grade C, B, A star, whether I want it to be a describe, explain question or application question. And if you want to make sure it really has the right style, in the past I have copied some AQA questions, pasted it in and said, for reference, this is the typical style and this is the typical mark scheme. But I do clarify, I do not want you to copy these questions. But it has that then as a reference point to know how it should present it, the kind of language that typically comes up as well. So this is perfect for making lessons more engaging, more effective, without doing hours of extra preparation. So even though I've been teaching for 15 years and I have all of my lessons planned, all the resources are there, sometimes when I go back to teaching it the next year, I just look at it and think, oh, that activity didn't really work. It was really boring. I just didn't have the time last year to change it. Now I can use ChatGPT like this. I can freshen up and improve my lessons so much quicker. And it's made an enormous level of difference to my confidence in delivering the lessons, the students' enjoyment, and their understanding of active engagement as well. Okay, next then is lesson planning. Now, you probably don't have to write full lesson plans very often anymore, but maybe if you're new to teaching you do, or if you've got a lesson observation you do, or if you just are teaching another side of the course for the first time, which lots of you have been telling me on Instagram, you're teaching the other half of A-level for the first time in years, and you now are wanting ideas and resources, this is great for that. So using ChatGPT to come up with a lesson plan. So it's not quite the same as a personalised plan, but ChatGPT is great for a starting point on this. So let's say you're covering mitosis. You could ask it for a lesson structure and ask it for a lesson objective, specify the level of the students in your class. Maybe say you want to focus on practical skills in particular, or maths or active engagement within that topic. And you could even say I want an assessment suggestion as well. Now, this is an absolute lifesaver for those last minute planning moments when you need to quickly cobble something together. You can make your prompts really specific too. So let ChatGPT know the size of your class, what sort of resources you have to hand, whether it's a mini whiteboard or not. If you have any students with SEND needs as well, the specification that you use, and say, I want you to consider all of that information when creating my lesson plan. Right, my next suggestion is, if you are teaching A-level for the first time, or maybe you're new to teaching, or maybe you're teaching the other half of the year, sometimes you come across topics you have to explain, which are really complicated concepts. And I find it quite helpful to say to ChatGPT, I'm teaching this topic for the first time in a long time. I know students find this really difficult, and it can sometimes be difficult to explain. So I want you to give me a really digestible way to explain this to students. Can you suggest maybe some analogies where it might be relevant, some acronyms where it might be relevant? Any way to try and make it easy to explain and easy to remember. I even asked ChatGPT to change the lyrics of Taylor Swift's Blank Space with a content linked to mitosis. And it was mind-blowing how good what it came up with, and the students loved it. And sometimes just for those topics that I find harder to explain, I asked ChatGPT to suggest the best way to explain it and bullet point the ideas, and also point out the misconceptions for me to address. The last one on the list is how you can use it to support students with neurodiversity or just any SEND. And this is a big one for differentiation. ChatGPT can actually provide targeted advice on how to adjust your teaching methods or your activities for students with, let's say, ADHD or dyslexia or autism. If you've already used it to write your lesson plan or to create resources, you could then say, I have a student in my class who has ADHD. Suggest how I could modify this lesson or this resource so that they are able to meet their potential and to take into account their needs. And if they have particular needs, or if they've got their own learning plan where it says these students perform best if you do X, Y, and Z, you can tell ChatGPT what it is you've been told that they need to do best. Now, obviously don't paste in any personal information about the student, but just generically saying these are their needs. And ChatGPT will offer tips for maintaining engagement, reducing overwhelm, and it's just perfect for helping you to come up with new ideas to craft an inclusive classroom environment. And this one I've actually, again, only recently thought of to use, and it is amazing. And I wish I'd thought of it earlier, because I actually had for my performance management target for the previous 2 years, one of my targets was linked to supporting students who were neurodivergent, particularly ADHD students that I had in my lesson. And I was really struggling to find any CPD that, first of all, didn't get cancelled, CPD that was actually out there in the first place, and some of the ones I did go on, I just didn't find it particularly helped. And then I thought to do my own research online and I could find some information, and it finally occurred to me, why don't I ask ChatGPT? Because I can tell them really specifically, I know that this is what the students' strengths are, this is what they particularly need support with, what can you suggest for how I can modify this activity or this? And it gave so many good ideas, and I now suddenly have a free, instant and usable CPD database basically for how I can help students with particular needs, so that I can now make sure that I am absolutely catering to every student's needs. Okay, quick win of the week then. Let's keep it relevant to this particular episode, which is all about ChatGPT. If you are short on time, but you need a new icebreaker or recap activity, here's your quick win. Go to ChatGPT and ask it to generate a quick starter activity for a, let's say, Year 11 biology lesson. It'll give you something unique and engaging that you can throw in your lesson with minimal effort. So there is your quick win of how to solve a problem this week. And that leads us into the resource roundup. As I tell you, every week I give you something for free linked to the episode, and this week's free resource roundup is my ChatGPT prompts for teachers. So I've got this linked in the show notes or in the YouTube description. You can click the link and it will take you to be able to download a whole PDF I have of different ideas of how to use ChatGPT as a teacher, like we've discussed today, and the prompts that you can copy and paste into ChatGPT and just edit for whatever your needs are. So hopefully, linking this back to the coffee catch-up at the start, anyone who is struggling at the moment with their work-life balance and the sheer volume of work they've got to do, maybe this will help speed up some of those jobs. That's a wrap for today. I hope this episode has given you some new ways to use ChatGPT or introduced you to it for the first time. If you do want to find out even more about ChatGPT and have more hands-on help from me, I am actually going to be running a free online CPD session for teachers all about how to use ChatGPT in January. So if you do want to sign up to that free session, sign-ups aren't live yet, but you can register your interest. So as soon as the sign-ups are live, you can do that. So again, I'll link it in the show notes and in the description of the YouTube version of this podcast to make sure you can come along to that free CPD session. If you did find this episode helpful, make sure you hit subscribe and please leave a review because it helps me to reach more teachers and to support teachers just like you. So that is it for this week, everyone. I hope you found it helpful and I'll see you next week for more Teach and Tell.